may our conversation and our meeting contribute to the conscious evolution of individuals who are listening to this recording, to our collective human family. And dear Sister Jayanti, I really want to warmly welcome you to the Conscious Evolution Summit. So it means a lot to me to have you joining this gathering, because you are the European Director of Brahma Kumaris, of a world spiritual university with many places all over the globe, and you are engaged in a deep spiritual path since decades, and you share your wisdom and your knowledge in so many places, countless opportunities. So I really feel very honored to have you joining here.
It's my privilege to be with you and to know that this event is happening and that so many are now interested in these topics. Because when I started my journey in India and I came back to London, to my home, to share these ideas, not many people were interested. This was way back at the end of the 60s. And since then, there's been a beautiful awakening that's happened globally, but especially in Europe. I see that so many in Europe are either meditating or following a vegan lifestyle, different things that indicate that that evolution is actually happening right now. So I'm very pleased to be with you, Puria.
Mm-hmm. And maybe, Sister Jayanti, before we really dive into your speciality, which one is really also kind of really leading with values, and I know you are expert in other directions as well, but first of all, let's maybe start kind of really personal. So what was your heart's calling to engage in this deep spiritual journey, in this deep spiritual path, and then also sharing and contributing, being in service of it?
My mother and my grandmother were both meditators with the Brahma Kumaris. And so I was exposed to the Brahma Kumaris family from the age of 8. And that was very lovely. But soon after that, we migrated to London, my immediate family, nuclear family. And then in London, I would see my mother meditating. I would sometimes join her at night, and we would have sometimes discussions about these ideas. But by the age of 14, I said, I'm not really interested. And then she was fine. She was very sensible, very wise, I would say. And so she let me find my own feet. But I went to India again when I was 15, and seeing the dire poverty there made me feel that my life can't just be for myself. It has to be of some type of service to others. And coming back to London, continuing with studies, all those things were happening. But by age 18, I was very deeply considering what are the choices that I have. And there was the permissive society that had just started. There was the traditional Western society, the traditional Indian society, and the path that my mother was following, which was a little bit different. So there was a variety. But they say that stress sometimes comes when you have too much choice and not enough wisdom with which to make your choice. And I was very fortunate that within my first term at university, seeing those choices and realizing that I didn't have the wisdom, speaking to my father, he suggested, why don't I go back to find my roots in India? And it wouldn't be a big deal to catch up one term the following year. I agreed, and so I came back to India. And for the first few months, it was being a tourist, a social butterfly, and just enjoying. And then my head began to feel a bit empty. And I thought, what is it that I can study in India that I can't study anywhere else? And of course, the answer was meditation, spirituality. And again, good fortune, I went knocking on the door of Dadi Janki. And she is now the head of the organization and is 103 years old. And at the moment, she's today traveled from India to Dubai. She's going to go to Nairobi after a couple of days and come to London in April. And so we're very lucky. But she was the one who was living in my hometown and ran the center there. So I knew her. And so going to see her, it was very interesting because she said to me, what is it that allows you to make a choice? And I had no answer. I was looking for an answer. And she then spoke about conscience and how conscience has become clouded through so many different influences. And we have to reawaken the conscience and reignite that flame within. And I decided I wanted to learn more. I started coming to the center once a day, then twice a day. And within a short time, I began to think, this is what I really need to do for the rest of my life. So that was a decision I made in April 1968. And I haven't changed my mind since. I know that this is the journey I must go on. And yes, at some point along the journey, early on, I thought, this has helped me personally so much. What about all my friends? Wouldn't they also have help from this? And so then there was the inspiration to share these ideas. And then coming back to London, it was hard, very hard. People had heard about meditation. The word had just come into everybody's language, but it was still seen very much as a hippie culture edition. It wasn't seen as something for the establishment. It was seen as something on the fringe. And yet through the years, now I see how last year at Davos, at the Economic Forum, they had meditation sessions every morning. So things like that are happening. And so it's good that there's been a slow but absolutely steady awakening that's happened throughout the world.
And Sister Jayanti, I'm interested, how would you explain awakening? Because you can kind of find many different facets of what people mean when they use this word. And I just want to set a good foundation for our ongoing conversation here.
For me, the awakening was when I realized that I'm not this physical body, but I am that inner being, the spirit, the soul. I would use the word soul to describe who I am. And so that first realization that I've identified always with this gender, age, culture, nationality, all of those things. But in fact, all those are the exterior costume. And I, the living being, am the being within, the point of light that resides within this physical form. And so I would say that that's the starting point of awakening. And it's a process. It's not just once and that's it. But you gradually awaken to more and more understanding of spirituality and the truth of the universal being of light and love. So it's been a process that's gone on.
And why do you think is this really putting this in the center of our life and really giving it value in our private life, in our working life, in our relationship is so needed in the time where we are in now?
If I look around the state of the world today, more so than at any other time in human history, what I'm seeing is a state of disorder and breakdown and chaos. Whether I look at the ecology, or I see human relationships, or I see the political scene, or the economic situation, I see breakdown and chaos. And I would suggest that the cause of that is not the situation out there. There's enough for all, and we're a human family, and we can share and live and love and enjoy the world together. But what's happened is that we've forgotten. And so in that amnesia, having lost touch with ourselves, with the inner being, then we are no longer in touch with the qualities that each and every one of us carries within the self. The joy, the beauty, the truth that lies within. And because of this, there's disorder and chaos going on in here. There's a dysfunctionality between our conscience and our thoughts and behavior. There's a dissonance between what I'm thinking and what I'm saying. And so all of these things combine together to create a situation of inner conflict. And in that state of inner conflict where I'm not in touch with my own original truth and values any longer, because everything's become very materialistic. So we've shut ourselves off from connecting with the inner being. And in that materialism, there's consumerism that's got in the way too. But all of these things have created the chaos around us in the world. And the only way to be able to bring back order into life and civilization is to come back to the journey within, discover that inner being that I am, and in that awareness of who I truly am, I rediscover those values that lie within. And once I've been able to do that, and I have the power and the capacity to start expressing these in my actions and in my life, we can rebuild all the things that have gone upside down today. So this is why I see that this awareness of who I truly am, and in that awareness recognizing you as the being that you truly are, then we're going to be able to together create a world which is a better place for all, not just for some limited few who feel that yes, everything is fine, but the vast majority of humanity continues to suffer. No, we can change things around, turn it around so that everybody's able to enjoy the world.
And I guess, Sister Jayanti, that a tool to support that, a tool is not really a good word for it, but really the wisdom to dive into that, to realize that and to embody it is, in your opinion, meditation?
Yes, definitely. But I would suggest that there's two things that go together. The study of spiritual knowledge, and then using that knowledge as the basis for my experience and experiment in meditation. I think that the word meditation is used in so many different ways. It's like a supermarket, different varieties of meditation available to suit each one. But I think that the meditation that I practice is the meditation of Raj Yoga. Yoga, union, Raja, the sovereign, the supreme, the yoga with which I regain sovereignty, mastery over myself. And so the study that we have, the spiritual knowledge that allows us to meditate and experience Raj Yoga is very specific. Knowledge of the self, knowledge of the divine, knowledge of karma, many different aspects.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know that kind of really diving deep into a path like that means really dedicating your life to it. But would it be possible that you maybe just guide us a bit for some minutes, 10, 15 minutes or less, a bit more? It depends on what you think really works, to kind of really give us a bit a taste, an opportunity to maybe get a bit of an experience of what you talk about?
Surely. We can do that now, or we can do that later, as you suggest. And yes, it is a journey of a lifetime, but one can have an immediate experience within a few minutes also, because it's a very natural journey to go within and to connect with the divine. So whenever you suggest, I'm available.
I would go for it right now to kind of also bring us all together in this field, in this setting, in this state of being. So, and then continue maybe from there.
Sure. Okay. People can either close their eyes or leave them half open, whatever is more comfortable. And I'll share my own thoughts as I go on this journey and invite you to do the same. I take a deep breath and let the body relax. My feet, my legs, my back, my shoulders, my arms, my neck, my face. And I focus in the center of the forehead, going deep inside and coming to that space that I occupy. I, the being of light, am like a star, a point of light, radiating light. I become aware of this sacred connection of soul and body. And for a few moments, I allow my mind to disconnect with the world outside, even with the body, and go deeper and deeper within. And as I do this, the speed of my thoughts slows down. And I come to that space where only I can enter. Within myself, that space of peace. I am light. I am peace. This is the natural state of being. This is the eternal state of being. In this awareness of I, the soul, I enter the presence of the divine. The supreme, the being of light. And from the source of light and love, I receive these treasures. And I fill myself with the unlimited love from the ocean, And from the source comes light, the light of purity, the light of truth, the light of joy. In the presence of the divine, I remember who I am. And claim the unlimited inheritance, my birthright of all treasures from the divine. And these treasures are not only for me, but the love, the light, the peace and joy, truth and beauty radiate out into the world. And in this experience of that love, the darkness is removed and the dawn breaks, and gradually the day begins. And we move into a better world, a world of truth. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. I mean, to be honest, I just could stay for some hours in this space, in this presence. And I mean, I have a bit of similar practice daily. I just don't like to start my day other than that. And also I can sense, I just share what I sense and how I feel when I'm there. So I feel very much centered in my heart, and yet also very open and expanded. And to feel connected with everything is so natural there. And I feel slower. I feel kind of very nourished and content. So I just sense that when I would kind of make decision what to do in this day, in how and why and with what to engage, would just come from a place of peace and being nourished and centered, and not motivated from fears or motivated from shoulds and things like that. So I guess with giving us this experience, we can kind of now maybe transition to where you share really the role of values and really embodying values and moving in life from there.
Sure. And I agree with all the things you said about beginning the day with time for the self and time to recenter and connect, because it's the recharging of the battery. And if the battery isn't fully charged, then it's not going to do its work properly through the day. And so it's absolutely vital that we do give this time to ourselves. It's not a luxury. It's not an obligation. It's absolutely a necessity for the self. And if I do that, then the rest of the day unfolds as it should, in absolutely the right way. But yes, we're very much into the subject called Karma Yoga. I explained about the mastery of the self, the sovereignty of the self, Raj Yoga. But there's also the aspect of applying that experience of yoga in life and practical activity and action. And so the first priority would be the self, the recharging of the self, because what happens is it's like the seed. The seed has latent within it all the potential for so much. But it's only when you plant it in the soil and the sunlight reaches it, the water is able to nourish it, all those ingredients come together, and then from that little seed, the plant germinates, and then you have all the rest of the story. In the same way, the soul contains all the values, the love, the truth, the purity, the joy, everything within itself. But it's only when we're on the field of action, the field of karma, and then we're exposed to each other, we're exposed to the light of the divine, that those values that are latent within the self then begin to emerge and be expressed in action. And that then becomes the karmic connection that we have with each other. And if we don't have that connection with the self and the divine, and that pure connection with each other, we're interacting, but we're interacting on a very superficial level. And so nothing is very stable. And so relationships are highly unstable. The situation in the world is extremely volatile. Anything can happen at any moment. But this is because we're engaged in the karma without the higher consciousness that yoga brings. And so putting these two things together, yoga and karma, action, and in that combination of karma yoga, we actually express our values in whatever it is we are doing. So values, for example, aren't isolated in one place or another, or one profession or another. Values are part of the living being, the soul. And in that awareness of who I am as spirit and soul, then from the morning when I awaken, right down through everything that I do in terms of my lifestyle, my responsibility, my work, my profession, whatever it may be, my leisure time, I'm using those values to express myself in my actions. And so at the end of the day, there's a huge credit that I've created. And where I haven't worked with values, then probably I've caused sorrow to others and I've taken sorrow for myself. And at the end of the day, there's a debt. And there has to come some point of time when these debts have to be settled. And so we go through a huge amount of trauma and suffering trying to settle things. But if we can turn it around and begin the day in the higher consciousness, then through the day, using that higher consciousness, that awareness of spirit, and connected with our inner qualities, our own inner values, as we express them in everything that we do. For example, the way I wake up, what is my first thought? Is it the thought of the divine, or is it to switch on my device and see what are the messages? And it's a very, very different consciousness, completely different. And if I begin with the connection with the divine, as you said, I begin with contentment. So often today, we start the day discontent and stressed. And I'm going to spill the coffee, I'm going to burn the toast, and the day is going to carry on like that. But if I start with contentment, no stress within, then each step of the way I'm going to be sharing peace, communicating peace. So breakfast, and maybe I live alone, and that's fine. Maybe I live with others, family, community, whoever. But if I can share something through my smile, through my pure vibrations when we meet together, that's beautiful. And in fact, what we do is not just time for the self or silence in the morning, but also time for spiritual study. Because when we study things, then you're pointing the compass in the right direction. Because then I remember. And today, for example, we studied about the whole subject of not being afraid of dying, being able to face life, but also to be able to face death, because the soul is eternal, immortal, and yes, the body perishes, but the soul continues its journey in some form or another. And so, because we started the day with that lesson, and I've just shared one sentence from it, that as you think about these things, as you're studying first thing in the morning, then these things stay with you through the day, and they become the compass that will guide you through the day also. And so sharing some of these things. So with the breakfast table, again, it creates a very powerful atmosphere. Instead of talking about politics and what's going on in the world around us, if we can talk about the higher things of human consciousness, we begin the day with a very elevated feeling. And then when you're sitting on the bus, you're sitting on the tube, and you don't have to look into anybody's eyes because they might not understand what you're doing. But what you can do is just simply be a beacon of light and share peace with everyone around you, whoever it may be. And you know how sometimes there's a bus or a carriage in which there's a lot of tension and aggravation, but sometimes there's a sense of calm. And so whatever there might have been before, but once you're on the bus or you're in the carriage, you create that sense of calm, very consciously sharing that vibration. You arrive at your desk and you're a very different person than you would have been otherwise. You're content, you're peaceful. And so as you walk in, you're able to smile at everyone from the heart, not an artificial smile, which is superficial, but really genuinely connecting with the other being and being able to, even without words, just make a contact, make a connection. So again, it's creating an atmosphere which is as it should be. And then you start your work, and all of these things will have influenced the way in which you're thinking, you're understanding a situation, you're responding to a situation. And so things work out in a more beautiful way than they would have otherwise. And so I see how, say, for example, in the field of ecology, if we had respect for ourselves, we would also have respect for nature. But we've forgotten about respecting ourselves and thought that we were just physical beings. So we lost touch with the being that we are. And so losing respect for the self because we didn't know who we were, we also lost respect for people. And there's been conflict because of lack of respect. But then further, we lost contact with nature. And so I see you have a beautiful plant beside you. So having even a little touch of nature is so valuable. And when I look out through the window, I see the allotments and the trees and the grass of the park that's just beyond. And so just that connection with nature is very rich and fulfilling. But just another connection in which then I respect all forms of life. I respect nature. And if I value and respect nature, then I don't see it as a resource that we have to plunder, that we have to take from, but as trustees of this planet, we've been given a task to care for everything with love. And so spirituality and values create a situation in which there's a very different relationship with human beings, but also with the animals and also the plants. And so we can restore harmony between humans and nature once again, once we come back to that awareness of values within the self. There was a lovely event I was at in India earlier this year in March in Delhi. And a woman who happens to be the vice president of Argentina was there. And she was speaking. And I'll share what she told us about her view of politics. She said, I see politics as the opportunity to serve people. Many people see politics as an opportunity to serve the self, but I see it as an opportunity to serve people. But I know that I can only serve people if I can experience God's love in my heart. Because when I experience God's love, then it's with that feeling of fulfillment and contentment that I can share love with the people who are there in front of me. And so politics is actually an expression of service and serving people with God's love. And so I don't think I've ever heard a politician describe politics in this way before. But you can see here's a woman of values. And so she was able to talk about this in public. And of course, I know that she's much loved by the people in her home country because of this essential concept of what is politics. And so spirituality and God's love coming into politics, and would the world be a little different? I'm sure it would. And so it changes things dramatically.
I so much resonate with that. And what also happens when I listen to you, I really can see that a lot of what you share for me has to do with really slowing down, has also to do with simplicity, really being present and just being aware and taking the time and the moment to perceive, to be really present, to be there, to feel, to sense, to notice. And what also came to me is especially when you shared about when we go into work, I just got it very clear, because many people are often very much concerned of what could I do, what would be good actions, how could I engage, and things like that. But when I listen to you, I just deeply receive that the how I am in what I do is much more important and relevant in the first place than what actually I do. The how I am is it, how I embody what I realized, what I am, and being an expression of the divine, feeling really interconnected with everything, and living that and this love and this peace. It seems to me that kind of naturally, if I wouldn't be in the right place, doing the right work, I would notice, and opportunities would come and I could just respond. For me, often it seems that we are too much concerned about the what and the doing so much.
Exactly. There's a very simple formula. There's the subject of the self, then the subject of relationships, and then the task. And if you ask most people what is the priority, they'll say, of course, it's a task. I have to do it by such and such a time frame, and I have to get all of this done. I have to get the report out. This has to happen, that has to happen. And in fact, it's a topsy-turvy way of looking at things, because if I were to come back to that formula, first, the inner being, the self, not self in a selfish way, but self in a very pure way, in that I'm aware of that which is the highest in all, aware of the self and aware of that in others too. So in that awareness of the self and the recharging of the battery, that's the priority. Then the second is not the task, but the quality of interaction that we have with everyone around us, and not even just one or two or four individuals, but am I able to keep that higher consciousness with everyone who I meet and connect with? And if that's okay, then everybody's respect and love and cooperation will come together, and the task will happen very, very easily. But just thinking about the task, and then we get pressure, then we get upset, and then there's anxiety, there's all sorts of things that go wrong.
Mhm. Yeah, and what also comes to my awareness is the relevance of living that, especially in the presence of children, of young people, because when we are an example of that, living it as parents, as some kind of teachers, educators, supporters of children, there I found it also very, very important to really take a moment and think about which kind of role model do I want to be? What do I want to embody to, as you said, which atmosphere do I want to create, especially to show children another way of being?
Right. And there's a beautiful expression they use, and they say that values can't be taught, but they can be caught. And so who I am and whatever it is I radiate, especially children, because they're so open, they haven't yet put on the layers of many, many masks that divide us and separate us. So they're open and they're very receptive to vibrations. You don't have to say very much, but they'll pick up many things. And so they'll catch the values that you yourself are experiencing and practicing in your life. And that will have an influence. Then whether they want to meditate or not is a second question. But the important thing is that they'll pick up your values.
Beautiful. So, Sister Jayanti, we almost came already to the end of our conversation. Time is really kind of going very quick when I'm engaged in something which is so meaningful for me. I get kind of consumed by it, eaten by it, but in a very beautiful way. But before we come to an end, I would like to give you the chance to share what you think is you haven't shared yet, and what you think is relevant for our audience listening to, watching this recording, really in this crucial time of transition to where many of us really sense that something other is possible than what we are coming from.
You've expressed very beautifully the thought that I did want to express, and that is that this is a very, very critical time in human history. It is a period of transition. We are moving from a world of darkness into a world of light. And although it seems as if there's chaos all around us, which there is, but beyond that chaos, there is a better world, a world of light. And so I wanted to offer our friends this message of hope, that although I've spoken about the breakdown and the chaos, but beyond that, there is something else. And that is what we're preparing for. yes, each moment that I have at this moment, right here and now, is precious and valuable, and I can make of it whatever it is I choose to. But apart from this moment, I can also have this vision in front of me of a world of light, and know that through all the chaos, we're actually moving through that to that world. And so I wanted to share that message of hope. But also, I wanted to say that there's an expression that's attributed to Mahatma Gandhi or his grandson. Some people say it's his grandson, some people say it's him, whatever. But it's a very simple slogan: let me be the change that I would like to see happen in the world. And so the things that I'm now thinking about, I'm experiencing in my meditation, can I actually practice all those things in my life so that then they take on a practical shape? And so you mentioned, for example, simplicity. It's a very, very important value. And today, most people don't recognize its benefit. But to be able to simplify my lifestyle, my dietary habits, to actually come down to what is essential and important, I think is vital, because I feel that that's then going to allow our minds to move into the unlimited. While we're cluttered with many things here, and it could be many beautiful things even, but all of these things are a real distraction. And yes, of course, I need what I need for my physical well-being and that for my family. But let me see how far I can simplify so that then my time, my money, my energy, my thoughts are safe. I can save them. And then with that safety and that which has been accumulated through saving, I can use all of that for a higher purpose. And so important to make time for the self, and important then to practice the things that I'm actually experiencing.
Yeah, and what came also to my mind when I was now listening to you is that in a way I often experience that something already exists in the invisible, in my internal reality. And sometimes we can become a bit impatient or kind of lose it because we don't see it manifest on the visible realm already. But what I would like to add to what you shared so beautifully is to really nourish and keep alive our vision of hope, and what we really sense is on its in its emergence, even though we might maybe not know exactly rationally how it would look like, but many of us, we sense it, we perceive it already, and really nourishing and keeping that alive, although it's not in some aspects yet manifested. This I would like to add.
Sure, definitely agree completely. Yeah.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, your embodiment of what you really realized in you, dear Sister Jayanti, and being part of Conscious Evolution Summit. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and thank you for all the work that you're doing for the evolution of humanity. It's very beautiful to be with you. Thank you.
I thank you, and I will also share the URL of your website. And is there any special event or anything which might happen in autumn or the end of this year? This would be the time when I will launch this summit.
We're likely to be having an event to mark the 150th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. And so that will be happening in London at our home in Global Cooperation House. And so maybe once the date is settled, we're just having a negotiation with the Gandhi Foundation about the date. And so that might be an event at the end of September or early October that might interest everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.